Hi, this is Bill Cecil, and welcome to episode number 6 of your Best Year Ever or Bust podcast series. This is the podcast series designed to help uplift, motivate, and empower teachers like yourself to make this your best year ever by helping you help your students make it their best year ever, no matter any and all challenges that you're going to face. And so it's that mindset of, I'm going to make it happen no matter what. I'm not looking to make any excuses this year. I'm on a mission to make it my students' best year ever so I can make it my best year ever, and that's my mindset. And if you have that kind of a mindset already, good for you. You're going to enjoy these podcast series. And if you're looking to find that mindset or create that mindset, this is the ideal podcast series for you because I'm hoping you'll find the answer as I'm working with you throughout these different episodes. So speaking of episodes, episode 6, this is the last episode in my little mini-series of setting the table for success, the 4 strategies that I wanted to share with you that help build the foundation in your classroom to build that positive, safe learning environment for your students, and also to build your students into a winning team. And remember, I've been saying all along in these episodes that you have to be willing to put in the time to save time in the long run. And so it's an investment. You're not wasting your time. You're investing time to get more time out of the year so you have more time to teach instead of putting up brush fires in your classroom, and your students will have more time to learn. So today, strategy number 4 is you have to establish and consistently enforce your team rules and consequences. You have to establish and consistently enforce your team rules and consequences. I got to tell you, this is the deal breaker. If you cannot master this strategy, then you're in trouble. This is going to be a nightmare for you and for your students. This is the one you have to get on top of as quickly as possible. And this is why, and I call it the deal breaker because this is why 40 to 50% of our new teachers leave within 5 years of teaching. That statistic has been around for a very long time. The numbers kind of float around. Like the last statistic I saw, I think the number was around 44%. But sometimes it's higher and sometimes it's a little bit lower. But that's still way too high. That's about 1 in 2 of every teachers that come into this profession leave within 5 years. I don't want any of you to be one of the casualties to that statistic. I don't want that to happen to you. So I really hope you're going to pay attention closely to this episode today. Yes, so what we're going to first talk about is that, number 1, you cannot teach until you can manage your team. And number 2, you cannot lead your team until you can manage your team. You have to be able to manage to do anything in your classroom. To teach, to lead, you have to first be able to manage them. Classroom management, I don't think we give it nearly enough time or discussion in our PDs, in our staff meetings, or even in our trainings to become teachers. And it's, you know what it is? It reminds me of when you're sitting on an airplane and they're giving you the instructions in case of an emergency, do this, this, or that, right? You got the thing under your seat, pull this down, put it on first, and then you're good. I mean, there's all these different discussions. And if you look around while the flight attendants are giving these instructions, most people aren't even paying attention because they're thinking, I don't need this. We're going to be fine. And that's a positive mindset. I like that. But it's better safe to be sorry. So it might be worth taking a listen. I think we do that too often as teachers going into teaching. We think, I'm not going to need to worry too much about classroom management. You know why? Because I'm going to be super cool, man. The kids are just going to love me. They're going to respect me. They're going to do whatever I ask them to do. So you may be thinking, I don't need to worry too much about this classroom management stuff because like I said, I'm going to be so cool. My students are going to just follow the rules automatically. So I don't need to pay attention to this. So maybe it is being taught and we're just not paying attention to it. This is why when I go out to speak to student teachers, I ask to have at least 3 or 4 weeks before I go in and speak to them. I don't want to speak to them before they start their student teaching and talk about these 4 strategies because they might think, I don't need those. I'm not going to need those. I already got my game plan. How do I know that? Because I did it myself when I first started teaching. I went in there thinking, I'm just going to be so cool and so, fun and whatever. And they're just, oh my gosh, was I wrong? Right away, I'm like, I got to pick up my game. I got to go back and really think about my management. And that's really what started getting me on this path. Plus, I had a lot of really good mentors, like I mentioned before, that really helped me figure that out very, very quickly and help me to get on that track. So this is what I'm trying to help you do as well. So the first thing you have to understand is that you will be tested by every team you lead. I don't care if it's your first year of teaching. I don't care if it's your 31st year of teaching like I was, right, my last year of teaching. You're going to be tested by every single group. And that does not make them bad kids. In fact, this happens at the adult levels too. Adults do this when they get a new principal in their school. I've seen it because I had several different principals that I worked for or superintendents. When the leadership changes or it's somebody new that's in front of these people, they're going to test the leadership only because, not because they're bad, they want to know what the boundaries are. They want to know what the playing field is. Where can they move around freely without running into any problems, or how much can they get away with? Because the more they can get away with, the easier their job's going to be. They don't have to worry so much. So the less structure you have in your room, or the less in their mind, it's a good thing. It's not a good thing for their learning. It's not a good thing for your teaching. But you have to help them understand real quickly what the boundaries are so that they know what it is. You're all going to be tested. And this is one test you cannot afford to fail, because if you fail this test, you're going to not only fail yourself as a teacher, you're going to fail your students. And you don't want to do that. So you really have to first understand that you will be tested and you're going to be up for the challenge. And so that's what this episode's about tonight. I'm going to give you a good example to get you started. We had a dog. We have a new dog now. Our dog that I'm going to be talking about, his name is Lucky, and he died a couple years ago. He was a great dog, just a fun dog, but he was a crazy dog. He was a kennel dog that we got. We got him at the animal shelter when he was like about a year and a half old, and he was so friendly and loving. But if he saw other dogs or squirrels or animals of any kind, he'd want to go right to him, because he was a dog that was chained up for most of his, I guess, first year and a half, we were told. And so he would go crazy when he saw other things. He wanted to get to him so bad, not to tear him up, but to just get to him, to just love him, because he never would initiate a fight with any other dogs. But he would come on so strong, he'd make other dogs a bit aggressive towards him, because they were thinking, this dog's crazy. And so, but the biggest fear was that he was going to run off. If he was ever broke leash, he could run out into a busy road and get hit by a car or something like that. But the thing is that he would go crazy when he saw other animals. So we had a fenced-in backyard, and it was great because he could run around and chase squirrels all day and into our apple trees. He never caught any, but it was fun for him to chase them. And I think they liked playing with him because they knew just when to jump in the tree and all that. So he was having a blast, and he was safe in our backyard doing that. But the problem was we had a place in northern Michigan, which we call up north, for those people that don't live in Michigan, which I always found interesting because I'm not from Michigan, and I always thought, well, Michigan's up north, because I was born in Kentucky and even lived in Atlanta for a small time when I was growing up. So when they're in Michigan and saying we're going up north, I always thought that was funny. But anyways, we have a place up north in Michigan. It's an area, we always say north of Clare, Michigan, and it's a beautiful area with lots of trees and lots of lakes. And so we have a small place on a lake up north, and we would go up there with our dog, and you can't have fences right up against the water and in your yards, And so you have an open yard pretty much. Most lakes are like that, and that's how ours is. And so our dog would go up there, and we'd have to tie her up to trees and things like that so that she wouldn't run off, and she didn't like being tied up, remember, from when she was... So she would just be miserable. She'd run around the tree. She'd get tangled. We'd have to keep getting up, untangling her. She didn't like being put on the leash by the tree or by the rope that was connected to the tree. So this was a pain. So finally, it was almost like a hassle to go up north, to enjoy our lake, because she was so stressed out. We were stressed out. So my wife finally said, we're going to get an invisible fence. And I'm calling them by name because they did such a wonderful job. And I thought she was crazy when she first said it. I'm like, invisible fence? What? We're going to pay money for something we can't see? And I've came to find out what it is. It's a bunch of cables, or a cable that they run underground in your yard around the perimeter of where you want your dog to safely be able to play. And that's what they do. It's like a wire, really. And they go out as far as you want, and they'll dig it into the ground. And even in the water, we could take it out into the water and stake it down with big cinder blocks. And we could go out so she could go swimming to a certain length, or, anything like that. And then we had to come back up around the backyard, or the lakefront property of our yard. And then we'd keep her away from the road. And so we set our boundary. And what they did was they put these blue flags all over about 3 or 4 feet in where the boundary was, all over the yard. So we had like probably 40 flags, marking where the boundary was 3 or 4 feet past it. And then they put the collar on the dog. And what they did is they had me hold her leash, and she had her collar on. And on this collar, if she gets to the flag, she's going to probably get a beep, because about 3 or 4 feet from the border, the wire, it's actually going to beep her collar to give her a warning. That's her warning that she's starting to break one of the boundaries. And if she goes further and actually crosses the boundary, she's going to get like a little zap. And I actually held this once and zapped myself, not on purpose, but I did. And you know what? It's not really painful. It's not like a bee sting, but it's uncomfortable. It's just an uncomfortable feeling. Like you can feel it vibrating, and it makes you just want to stop because it doesn't feel right. And so that's what they told her it would happen. And you can raise the level or lower the level of that zap, I guess. And we kept ours at as minimal as we could go to keep her from going out of the yard. But what would happen is, the first thing what we did was we trained her to stay away from the flags. Just stay away from, don't go past the flags, you'll never get zapped. The person that was from Invisible Fence gave the leash to my wife, and she had her start to walk towards me by the flags. I would go behind a flag, and she wants to come to me because I'd be calling her. I'd say, Lucky, come here, come here. Lucky'd start to come towards the flag, and as she got close to the flag, I'd start shaking the flag violently, going, no, bad flag, no. And she would go, oh gosh, and my wife would be pulling her back towards the center of the yard. And she'd, the dog's like, what's going on? There's something wrong with that flag. She'd come to the next flag. I'd go, come here, Lucky, come here. She'd kind of be slow, but she'd start coming to me, and she'd get close. I'd say, no, bad flag, no. And she'd move back. And so she started to initiate, because she'd hear that. When I heard her get that little ding on her collar, I would start to say, back, bad flag. And each flag I would do the same. So she was associating, like Pavlov's dog earlier, she would associate the bing or the noise with the bad flag, that it was something she didn't want to be near. So she'd start to stay away from the flags. So we did this for the entire yard. It took a good hour or so to get to all the flags, but it was worth it. And then the next few days, anytime she'd get to the flag, we'd go out with her. If she got close to a flag and we heard it ding, we'd start going, bad flag, come back to it. Come back to the middle of the yard where we would be. And she'd come to us and we're like, you're okay, you're good. Good dog. They said eventually she's going to cross over. So you got to stay out with her every single time until she crosses over a couple times. Sure enough, one day we have a squirrel in our backyard. The squirrel, she sees it. She's like, oh man, I'm going for you, squirrel. I'm going to get you. And she's running. She gets that ding. And she's like, I don't care. Today's the day I'm going to get you, squirrel. And she goes a little bit further and she gets a little zip. And all of a sudden she's like, oh, but she turns around, comes running back to me in the middle of the yard. And I go, it's okay. You're okay. She did that one other time, and that was it. From that point on, she never went near the flags. We eventually took all the flags out, so she knew her boundaries. She never got zipped again that we know of. And in fact, there were sometimes we took her outside without her collar even on after a year or so, and she would go up and she knew her boundaries. She never would go. She could have a team of squirrels doing a parade by the driveway. She would know her boundaries and stop and bark at them, but within her boundaries. So the point of this story is this. I'm not asking you to put collars around your kids and put flags in your room and zip them and this and that. No, that would be bad. That would be really bad press. So don't even try that. I'm not asking you to do that anyway, okay? But what I am asking you to do is to set up a room that has boundaries, that your kids learn that where they can play and work and what they can do in that room within that boundary, so that they never get a consequence, either a warning or some kind of a punishment. And so that they get used to what the boundaries are. And after about 2 or 3 weeks of that, you don't have to worry about disciplining your kids every day. You don't have to worry about brush fires anymore. Why? Because like my dog, they know how to play and work within the area that you've set up or what the rules are. They know the boundaries. They know what they can and cannot do. And so you don't have to keep reminding them. It becomes a habit. Pavlov's dogs, 21 to 30 days. Keep it alive and it will start to work. How do I know? Because I would keep names on my pad. I didn't write names on my wall or my chalkboard. I would say, if a kid broke a rule, I'd just say, hey, I got your name on my pad. That's a warning. That's strike 1, strike 2, you get a little consequence, and that is, and I would tell them. But the point is that they would know what it was, and then they start to just learn what the boundaries were. So the first thing is you've got to be willing to set up boundaries for your kids. That means you have to establish at least 5, and I wouldn't go over 5, actually. I'd do 5 rules or less, and I would make them positive rules that don't say what you don't want, but what you do want. So instead of saying no talking, say only one person talks at a time, something like that. Or no running in the hallway, we walk collectively as a team down the hall. Have a rule that states what you do want instead of what you don't want, because you get more of what you focus on. I'm just a big believer in that. It's like a GPS in your brain. If you're looking for something negative, you're going to find it. If you're looking for something positive, more times than not, you're going to find it. Same thing with your rules. You want to be positive, so the kids are looking up there at the rules every day, and you're referring to them, but in a positive way. Remember, only one person talking at a time, or we show respect by keeping our hands to ourselves. Things like that. And so I'm not going to tell you what your rules should be. That's really, I think, up to you and your team to decide, and what your school allows for the rules to be or not to be. But you definitely got to have your rules posted, and they got to be positive. This is the beginning of your boundaries. Now, these don't mean anything if you don't enforce them. By the way, if you give your kids 40 chances before you give them a little zap, right? Let's say they go through the blue flag and you give them a warning and then another warning and then another warning, but they never get a little zap if they keep breaking the rule, then you're allowing that to happen in your classroom. You're failing the test, basically. So what you have to do is you have to have the courage that when they step over that boundary, you have to give them that little zap. So maybe the first time you say, you know what, that's a warning. If you break a rule in our room the rest of the day, each day's a new day, but each day you have like a little tally going. If you break the rule, then what's going to happen is you're going to get a consequence. And the first consequence, that would be your second time of breaking a rule today, would be maybe you're going to miss 5 minutes of recess. Yes, it's not all their recess. It may not even be half the recess. But the point is, it's just a little bit of a zing or a little bit of a zap that lets them know, okay, yeah, there is a consequence that you get for breaking the rules in here. And maybe it goes up the ante, So the second time it might be you miss a half, or the third time they break a rule that day, it might be they've had a warning. One consequence, it might be instead of 5 minutes, now I'm going to move it up to 10 minutes. Okay. Or, maybe the next rule would be whole recess for the whole day. And then the next one might be a phone call home. I have to let your parent, or a note home. I have to let your parents know what we can do to work with you together to kind of help you follow the rules. So they have to know that there's some kind of zaps, I guess, consequences. But again, I don't call them punishments. Consequences are just natural things that happen if you know what can happen if you don't do it, good or bad, right? If I roll up my window and I leave my car out at night and it rains, the good consequence is I get to sit down on dry seats the next day, right? Because I had my window up. But if I go outside and I left my window down and it rains and I have to go to work with a wet seat and my pants get wet, that's not somebody punishing me. That's me making a mistake. And the consequence is, a natural consequence is that my seat got wet and I sat in it, or, I had to put a towel down or whatever. But the point is, you got to have consequences. So what you want to also think about is that kids like structure. They do. And again, you can't compare it to home. Parents don't have 25 kids running around all day or trying to get up and get out of sitting for 6 hours a day trying to get instruction. So you can't compare the two. But your kids may fight you a little bit at first because they're not used to structure. They may be uncomfortable with it at first. But like my dog, once they get used to it, they're going to be running around not running around in your room, but they're going to be, experiencing your classroom in a very relaxed, fun way, knowing when it's okay to do this, when it's okay to do that, how you can do this, how you can do that, not worrying about, am I going to get just a zap out of nowhere? Am I going to get punished or yelled at for something I didn't even, So it's not even about anything like that. It's about creating a structure that makes them feel safe, not only for themselves, but for others in the room, so that everybody in the room feels safe taking risks in their learning, and they feel like there's, again, more time for you to teach and for them more time to learn instead of less distractions. This is the deal breaker. You have to be able to do this. And I'm going to help you with that. There's 4 ways to set boundaries in your room. I've already talked about the first one. You want to establish 5 rules or less, and you want to post them for all to see. Okay? And again, don't post what you don't want. Post what you do want. And then the second way you can help create these boundaries is that you want to create positive and negative consequences. And again, I try to have more positive consequences, incentives, I call them, that my kids can earn. For example, if we're walking in the hallway, like I said, and we get a compliment, we get 5 extra minutes of recess that day. That's an incentive, right? Or if they can go the whole month without getting their name on my pad in my classroom any day, they get a glowing behavior report that I would send home to their parents at the end of the month. Everybody gets a behavior report, and it has the 5 rules, and I would tell them which rules they've mastered to date and which ones that they're still kind of working on. That's how I would phrase that on my monthly behavior report that would go home to every student. And at the bottom, I'd have notes. And if they got a glowing, it would say glowing behavior report across the top. And they would get to go to my treat drawer and pull out a small piece of candy, which was a very small treat for an entire month. But believe me, they wanted it, not just for that. They wanted to take home a glowing report to their parents. But definitely you got to have positive and negative consequences. And the negative consequences shouldn't be anything that is, is brutal or just plain out a punishment, just to get even with the kids. But instead of yelling at your kids all the time, it's just a simple reminder. Hey, you lost 5 minutes of your recess today. Or, we're trying to earn this movie, and everybody has to, in one of the rooms, our partners are going to earn a movie this week. And if everybody can earn it, you get to go. And if you don't, you can stay in our room and get caught up on work you need to get caught up. And then maybe you'll get to join them next time, And so whatever the incentives you guys think are fair and that your school thinks is fair, that, I can't go in specifics because every room, every grade level is different. But I've had high school teachers tell me they've brought in brownies for their kids on their high school students for Fridays if they've earned it individually or as a group. So, or different treats like that. Or they got to play tape ball one time, which I mentioned tape ball. They got to go out and play tape ball instead of the last 5 minutes of class as a group, or a small portion of the group got to go out and do something like that. So it's however you want to work it out. It could be team incentives, it could be individual incentives, but you want to have, I would think, more positive incentives than negative incentives to get your kids really focused on following the rules until they become a habit. And again, once it becomes intrinsic, once they know, it feels good to follow the rules. It feels good to have structure. It feels good to be in a safe room. They're not so much worried about the extrinsic rewards of treat drawers and glowing reports. It's more, it just feels good, and they want to be a part of that team, or people recognize them for, glowing reports from your guest teachers when you're absent, your substitute teachers. I used to have the Wall of Fame, and we'd get a team award when I got a glowing report from a guest teacher saying this is one of the best groups I've ever worked with. And so that was something they loved. But it was more the pride. They didn't get anything from that piece of paper on the wall. It was just, oh, we got another one. Look at that. It was pride. So, but it's having that structure there. And then you have to be consistent. It's like I told my kids, I never, ever put the spotlight on bad behavior. I try never to put the spotlight on bad behavior in my classroom, but I always put the spotlight on good behavior. So I want my kids to realize that's how you get attention. That's how you get the teacher's attention. Like at home sometimes, maybe they act up to get their parents' attention, or in other classrooms they had to do to get the teacher's attention, right? I'm here. I want you to know I'm here. Even if it means I get yelled at or I do something, I want you to see me. So there it is. No, I want it to be that you catch kids doing something well and compliment them, and they start to realize, oh, that's how you get love in this room. He just glows over you when you do something well. So for example, if I have somebody like talking in the middle of a lesson, I might say, oh, Jimmy, I'm sorry. I got to stop. Jimmy, you're talking over people. Remember, you want to let one person talk at a time to show respect, so they'll show you that same respect when you're talking. So that's just a warning to you. You only have one, so that's only a warning. Next time you're going to lose 5 minutes of recess. You don't want that. So I just want to give you that. Okay, I do that less than 10 seconds or so, and then I'm off and running again. I don't sit there and, Jimmy, what are you doing? You do this every day. And Jimmy's feeling beat up and just beaten down. I don't want to do that. I don't want to embarrass him. Then I lose a fan. He loses my respect. He's not going to want to work for me the rest of the year. He's going to be working against me. So I treat him with respect, right? Like if I have a police officer pull me over on the side of the road and I'm going 75 or 78 in a 70, yeah, I understand. I deserve the ticket, I guess. I don't like it, but I deserve the ticket. It's the law. I should know what the law is. But I don't deserve to be yanked out of my car, berated and embarrassed for everybody in the world to see, and then given the ticket, right? I'm going to lose respect for that officer that does that to me, embarrasses me like that. I want to be treated with respect. Yep, you broke the law. This is what it is. Just like they want me to treat them with respect. Yes, sir, officer. I understand that was my mistake. Thank you very much, or whatever. So, but you want to definitely catch them doing things well. So like if somebody's doing something well in my hand, Jimmy raises his hand the next time to speak out instead of talk out, and he raises his hand. I'm like, Jimmy, look, you just raised your hand, buddy. See, you're doing it. You made the adjustment. Give me 5. Nice job, Jimmy. That's what I like. And that's why I know you're going to have your best year ever, because you figured out things. You figured out I made a mistake, but I'm learning from my mistakes so I don't make the same mistakes over again. That's one of our main goals this year. And you're modeling that for the entire team. Thank you. Give me 5. Nice job. Or give me knuckles. Nice job. And other kids are like, oh, that's how you get attention in here. Man, he's glowing over Jimmy right now. So I try to catch my kids doing good things as much as possible, but I never ignore bad behavior. Like I said, I want them to know if you break the rule, you're going to pay a consequence. Sometimes we tend to look the other way sometimes if we call them the good kids, right? Oh, they just made a mistake, and I don't want to upset them, so I'll just kind of let that one slide and talk to them about it later. You can't do that. You have to treat everybody equally, right? So in my classroom, they're all good kids, all right? So I never like that saying, good kids, bad kids. That's terrible, because I was probably one of the ones labeled a bad kid, I'm sure, in my earlier grades as a small kid when I was struggling. And so I'm kind of, touchy about that. And so I want to make sure I didn't keep that going when I was a teacher. I wanted to break that, whatever that is, as much as I can, so kids don't experience that. And hopefully other teachers see there's a way to do it without doing it that way, which many, many teachers do. Believe me, many, many, many do. We have a ton of amazing teachers. We're lucky in this profession to be so blessed with so many great teachers. But basically what you got to do is you got to have leverage. All right. And so that's number 3. And then discipline with dignity is you got to treat them well. And so, yeah, leverage just means you give them things that they can earn. They love to earn things. Like I said, they love to earn that glowing report from the subs, right? The team award or the team assist award, or they love getting a glowing report going home for their behavior report. They love earning things. They love earning a movie for that month. If we can go the whole month without getting, a number of checks on the board throughout the day that says the whole team is off task, which we could lose 5 minutes of recess if we get 2 checks, or a whole recess if we get 3 checks, or whatever. And so it's something they're working to avoid, the negative consequence, but it's something bigger they're trying to earn, which is something big that they might be trying to earn. Or like the Friday cupcakes for the class if they've done a really amazing week, or during testing week or something. So, but give them things to work for more than try to work against. And that's the leverage piece. You got to have leverage because we don't have a job where we can go in and fire our kids. We can't say, you're fired. You know what? I've had enough of you. In the real world, they can do that. They can let you go. You know what? We're going to fire you. And unfortunately, you broke some of the rules and you've done it too many times. There was a big rule. You're out. You're done. You're fired. We can't do that with our students, right? So we got to have leverage of things we can do that make them try to make those adjustments. And so that they know what the boundaries are, so they don't get these little zaps, but better yet, they have things that they can get within the boundaries that they can earn amazing incentives that want to keep them going long enough, again, for it to become intrinsic, and they like to feel the pride, they like to feel the, whatever that is, a safe environment, being a part of that and creating that and realizing it feels great to come to school every day in that kind of environment, that they're not looking for those other incentives as much, even though I still offer them up. Why not? It's a small investment and it pays off really well. In my book, my playbook, Best Year Ever, Winning Strategies to Thrive in Today's Classroom, I have something in there called the Rules Workshop, which you can work with your kids to help them, have them help you create the rules. Because they know what a good classroom is with rules. And if they help you create the rules, then they're going to buy in much quicker. Right? And that's what I would do in my room. And so what I would do is I would take them through a little workshop, and it took about 60 minutes, but it was like 2 days worth. The first week of school, the first couple of days of school, we were trying to establish these things. I would have them start working in small teams to come up with their set of rules. We'd show those off, talk about them, and then we'd narrow them down to our class rules that I would write down, 5 or less, and then we would, vote on them eventually to get them to where everybody was happy with them. And then that was sort of like our contract that we would have. We'd all say, yes, I can commit to these. We all had a chance to build them. And because they had a chance to say in what the rules were, they couldn't turn to me anytime during the year and say, I don't like that rule. That's not fair. That's not fair. Guys, you created these rules, right? I tell you what the consequences are, and we will post those as well. But you will definitely have a say in the rules to make it fair and safe in this classroom. And so the 4 pages or 5 pages, I think it's from like page 20, I wrote it down. Yeah, page 204 to page 209 in my appendix 1 in my playbook. And so if you want to check that out, if it's something you want to do, take a little bit more time, but maybe a quicker way to get buy-in from your team and make it kind of a fun activity to get to know your kids and for them to get to know you and to see that you're really wanting to work with them and not just come in and be the dictator and say, it's always my way, this way or the highway. That, yes, you're the leader, a strong leader, and you're in charge, but that you also like to delegate and get them to be involved as well. So that's in my book as well if you're interested. And again, you can check that out on my website, bestyearever.net. I think I'll stop there, though, today. And this is the end of the 4 strategies. So what I hope is you'll go back and listen to these episodes again and start, trying to, if you need extra help or you want to think about them a little bit more, you'll go back and re-listen to some of these and start taking action on some of them. But here from moving on, I'm going to be talking about other topics, and I'll be coming back to these, I'm sure, touching on them. But definitely, I think these are the 4 you want to try to master in the first 30 days. And then even though you'll still be doing them all year long, but much less time needed. And now you're going to start seeing results like the kids are. These are strong habits where you're going to start seeing, wow, I'm having a lot more time to teach than other years, or this feels a lot less stressful. And so if you stick with it long enough, that diet or that workout program, you're going to start seeing results just like that in your classroom. You're going to start seeing results. You're going to want to stick with it. So, all right. Hey, before I say goodbye, I just want to thank you again for listening and taking the time. I know how busy you are to take your time to kind of take in some of these new ideas and to, just sharing them with others. If you're doing that, that means the world to me because I am trying to get the word out, especially to newer teachers, younger teachers, or teachers you might see struggling in your school that, you can maybe talk to them privately and say, hey, I've been listening to this podcast series. You might want to enjoy it or whatever. But thank you so much for listening and for sharing them out with others. And please never forget, best year ever. You have the power to make it happen.